Hello, y'all. I recorded this banger video yesterday, and there's no audio. So we're gonna record it again. Well, really, I'm not recording it again because I liked exactly what I did for this video, which means you're gonna watch me react to myself as I talk about this video because I love this video so much, and I'm really upset that I don't have audio. And it's not that I only recorded just one video yesterday. I recorded three, and none of them have audio. But this one was my favorite one, so it's the one I uploaded yesterday. So I'm gonna you'll hear me yap real quick, and we won't hear anything because there's no audio. But I'm gonna go through this video because I love this video. Okay, basically, here I am yesterday. Yesterday, I was talking about at the end of this video that I grew up. I was a teenage fundamentalist. I grew up in a very conservative Christian private schools. Um, the ones that are all about modesty and that like women should be submissive and that you should be modest and you have very biased history and science books. I don't even know why I have headphones on. I'm not listening to anything. Um, there's a lot of rules about stuff and their authority of scripture and that you have to go to a Bible believing church and all those other things. I don't know, what does it even mean, Bible believing church? But anyway, um, so I realized a lot in my life. This isn't the person I want to be, especially as I knew that my calling was in the church and the ordained ministry. Not having people affirm that was like a very like kind of thing. And then kind of like when 2020 happens, the rise of Black Lives Matter. As a black person, as you can obviously tell, seeing my church and my school not advocate as much as my heart did really like wasn't it for me. So I kind of stepped away from church for a while, but I ended up finding my way back to the church and being Episcopalian. But I kind of wanted to talk about in this video that you end up in a life a lot of like lacking sex education because like sex is only for married people, but like married husband and wife, only husbands and wives. Sorry. And that kind of thing, and that really messes with your head when you're trying to find your identity and who you are and what you want to do with your life. Knowing people being frustrated with themselves, learning who they are, trying to discover themselves, and it's very hard and complicated. And I don't know exactly else what I was saying because I was yapping here. Yeah, I yapped for a bit here. But I kind of talked about a lot that finding my identity was very difficult, and these two schools I went to, I forgot to put that in the second half of the video that we didn't go deep into this video that I wanted to do. So I guess I'll give you some more content added onto this one. But what I was going to say was a lot of the time they use these two curriculums, which is Rebecca and Bob Jones. And if you've never heard about any of them, don't teach your children from them, okay? They're very right-leaning Christian nationalist agenda kind of curriculums that claim to use the authority of scripture to teach children. Sure, they're very good at teaching children to read, but like when you're 5 years old and they're teaching you the alphabet and they're like, "Hey, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God," you're like, I don't know. There's a lot of fear and shame and condemnation in like teaching small children like you better let Jesus in your heart. You're going to hell and you're 5 years old. Okay. Yeah. So as a currently an evangelical, I wanted to talk a little bit about my life and the kind of things that like I went through, right? Blah blah was yapping. Okay. Transition to the internet. Let's put myself hold on. I'm going over here now. Whoop. Oops. Where's my mouse? Where is my mouse? Okay. So we opened up this lovely browser here. And I click through some of the things that show up when you kind of Google these kind of books. So for 2-year-olds, they're literally like indoctrinating 2-year-olds, okay, which is a little crazy here. And you kind of go through this through your whole school life. They have these big cards, I think I'm talking about here. When you like show them, and there's legit like very not necessarily graphic per se, but there's a lot of them that are like the crucifixion and this very like evangelical idea about what heaven looks like, and this very much idea of like Judgment Day and the rapture kind of thing. But you're like 5 years old, and there is a picture I think believe in there that's about they have like this like picture of Jesus being whipped, and they're like, this is kind of graphic for these cards, being like, you did this. Jesus died for your sin, and if you don't let him to your heart, you're going to hell. Yes, those are the kind of things they're teaching small children. I was kind of, I was clicking through kind of thing about these kind of topics, and it's a kind of a dark thing, when you're like a kid, and you're like, well, I'm getting indoctrinated essentially. And I'm not saying that like Christian education is bad, because I found it somewhat useful in my life as going into ordained ministry, and it was a topic I was very interested in, and I was very good at memorizing things. So like, I really was just like the model Bible student. Okay, I really was. I think that picture specifically is like, there's no churches in heaven, because I don't know what heaven is like. And I think I kind of take this time to explain that, like, I don't know if this is part of that part of the video or not. I'm clicking through, looking at these cards. I'm trying to see if I see when I get to some interesting stuff, because I'm a yapper. I was talking about the first Thanksgiving. They throw this in because they want you to have this understanding that, like, this is a Christian nation, and that you have been founded by Christian principles. Incorrect. Founding fathers were deists. I go on a little bit of a tangent about Abraham Lincoln and about how, like, they had this wrong idea about Emancipation Proclamation and only freed slaves in the South, but the South didn't care, so it didn't even matter for them. So it didn't even matter for real to them anyway. They could care less. So when we talk about that kind of thing, it didn't even really matter at the end of the day. I hope this is not on the screen I'm recording, because that makes me look unprofessional. Lock that in. Okay, it's locked in. Continuing on my tangent, I think I clicked through some more about these kind of things. The first Christmas, there's different topics in the Bible. Bible journal. I don't even know what are you doing? What is your Bible journal? Okay, and you're 10 years old, in 5th grade, 11 years old. I think I'd go to talk about the crucifixion, resurrection thing again, about like the white Jesus and the pictures and the blah 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 blah. Yes, there I go again. I have no idea what I'm saying because I don't have the audio. I think we kind of click through these cards and stuff, and I talk about like this white Jesus thing and how like they kind of shame you into this faith, because when you think about, like, Jesus didn't come to, I mean, yes, Jesus died for your sin, but Jesus was a revolutionary in the sense that, like, there were many saviors in Rome coming to say we're going to conquest Rome and take over our country again, but Jesus comes as a peaceful king who died. I think I was going on a tangent. Jesus Christ Superstar came out last weekend in the Hollywood Bowl, and talking about how, like, our faith, I still have one of these books. I was talking about, I have the Kings of Israel one, but how about our faith is a representation of like who we are and what we do, and if you want to be accurate about what we talk about, Jesus was black. Yes, Jesus was black, and I don't know why that has to be so controversial, but Jesus was black. And having Cynthia Erivo play Jesus shows the plight of black people, because when we talk a little, I don't know what I was saying because I'm probably gonna blah 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 blah. Pause. Talking about Cynthia Erivo playing Jesus and how like that is such. We talk about, there's a James Cone in the Cross and the Lynching Tree talking about how Jesus was the first lynching victim of the state. He was a wrongly innocent man executed by the state. And that's such an important thing we talk about at the cross and black people. And there's another book I've been reading, The Day God Saw Me as Black, by D. Danielle Thomas. She talks about how like enslaved people essentially were basically taught about the suffering Jesus versus the Jesus who was a revolutionary, who came to save people, because even though slave masters and enslaved people they made them become Christians. They forced them into conversion. How that, like, they didn't have a choice, and they cut out the parts of the Bible that talk about being saved and being free, because they didn't want that. However, they found freedom in themselves and studying scripture for themselves. So, yeah. So I think I opened up this book about this Bible doctrines book. It talks about, this first opening of this book says, who wrote the Bible? It says all scriptures God breathed, which I think they're contradicting themselves here. They're talking about God breathed and they quote the scripture that says all scripture is by the inspiration of God. inspiration, they use it. They say there is a compound Greek word here, but they don't tell you what it is, which I think is when we talk about languages that they should tell you what these words are. As a person who studied Greek, I wasn't good at it, but I had an overall understanding of Greek. God breathed this word over 15,000. Prepared, studied, and chose men of not all scriptures written by men. Okay, there's certain books we don't know who wrote them, and we can't ascribe them to men specifically. And also, not all, most scripture it's oral. Some of the stories are told the Bible are oral and eventually written down, so we can't specifically just tie it down to one specific thing here. God breathed, blah, but scriptures were mute, blah blah blah. The Bible is clear, and they kind of use these little scriptures here to say that God wrote the scripture. God's and they also are firmly believe that you should only use the King James version, even though King James had an agenda here. So I cannot say that's accurate either. I think I said this in the video that context is important. That we can't just take out these one scriptures and be like, yes, this answers our question. That's simply not how that works. I go on some more yapping. Okay. They have this big text of scripture, which I don't even know. I've not read this. I mean, I've read scripture, obviously, but like this kind of clump text here is kind of strange to do. I wasn't done yet. Okay. Pause. It says what scripture is and what scripture is not. He kind of talk about him as Messiah, but I think that can be true. That like, there's plenty of books and texts that aren't scripture but teach us a lot about God, and I think we're missing out on not seeing God. God can show God's self in many different ways, and I think we're missing out when we only use one text to talk about God in that way. Verbal inspiration, which is kind of true. They quote Spurgeon, who was a theologian. I don't know much about Charles Haddon Spurgeon, but I wanted to get back into him, but I haven't. It's been a minute since I've read some of his work. Clicking once again, they're kind of talking about. I guess I kept going on the rant about. So, okay. So there's the table of contents in this book. They break up these topics here. My topic, proof of scripture, proof of inspiration, candidacy of the Bible. But I think they don't. If you guys can find these books for me, I kind of want to deep dive. But talking about like they probably don't quote like Saint Thomas Aquinas and other saints, like and not necessarily saints, but early theologians of the early church, because of what they believed about scripture, and that kind of contradicts some of the things they're trying to teach you about scripture. I'm sorry, I have the itchiest eyes ever today. Once again, they're kind of a very pro God is male, even though scripture has talking God can be any way God self desires. However, I think exclusively being male can be a little damaging. So however you want to call God, God's okay with. Alright, I don't think God's mad if you call God a she or he or they or any pronoun you desire. Theology, existence of God, I don't know. I want to deep dive in these kind of things. Creation, they're very strict on the thought that creation, the earth was created in 6 days. Even though we don't really know how that works, but or about what about like Adam and Eve and their story. But I trust that God has spoken through this kind of thing, and that whatever about it is, we get something out of it, because they're kind of anti the trope that God, that script, that the Bible, they're 100% in the camp of the Bible is 100% literalist, should be taken as fact, true, nothing else. But I think we're lacking out when we forget about taking scripture as like, some of these are stories, like they weren't meant to be literal. Some of them are up into interpretation. Some of them are meant to just teach you something. Like we know, like Jonah didn't really happen. It's a folk tale told as satire, but they want you to believe that it's true. But you take the essence out of the story of like that being true. Christology, nature of Jesus, Jesus' supernatural life. I don't know what humiliation of Jesus means here, but I think we'll go figure it out someday. Pneumology is the study of the Holy Spirit. Um, if they're not like it's their sources, hopefully they have decent sources, like early church theologians, and not just being like, "This is what we think because." Anyway, blah, blah, blah. There's a little bit we went through this. Yes, here's the last things in this book. Okay, they're probably not quoting Aquinas when they're talking about angels because I don't know. They probably aren't because they don't really believe that much in saints and what they had to say about theology per se. Because I learned a lot reading about St. Thomas Aquinas about his thoughts on angels, and his thoughts on demons and heaven and hell. The origins of man, origins of sin. Unfortunately, I think we come as Episcopalian, we believe that like the first thing that God calls you is child of God, not sinner. Okay, and I think that coming from that place is a whole lot healthier than like you are a sinner, you're born in sin, and you're going to hell if you don't believe in Jesus, kind of thing. Because Jesus doesn't say that. Not does he? I could get a lot of trouble. I probably a bit of a heretic, but whatever. I got a degree. Do you have a degree in theology? Don't talk to me. Soteriology, the necessary salvation. There's different camps that believe different things about theology, and I don't know where they stand about these kind of things. You know, like there's 4 methods of atonement, thoughts of atonement, not methods of atonement. And they're all very interesting. Ecclesiology, doctrine of the church. They don't believe women should be pastors, so ordinances of the church, officers of the church are probably all men. Angels, we said a little bit about that. Eschatology, okay, I wanted to talk about the eschatology thing because that really bothers me a lot because the first thing they bring up here is rapture. There's no scriptural backing for a rapture, okay? There's just not. There's things that sound like it could be a rapture, but there's nothing specifically. This word rapture isn't even in the Bible, period. You know, have you ever read like the Left Behind series and stuff like that? That's Christian fan fiction, as my college professors would say. But that kind of thing, the judgment seat of Christ, that you're gonna go before God, and you're gonna be judged for your sin. I don't know about that. You know, I don't really like that thought anymore. I hadn't thought much about it recently, but the thought that like that's kind of scary, and that's like that always terrified me as a kid. Being like, what if there was one sin I missed on and I can't stay in heaven? Like that terrified me. But you know, I'm a universalist now, so I'm in the universalist camp that all will be redeemed. Because when we talk about scripture, you know, we talk about like it says there'll be a new heaven and a new earth in Revelation, and that God comes down to us, not we go to God. You know, and I think that is a very comforting thought. Tribulation. Remember, we have to be specific about Revelation here, about how like John's Revelation was written to a specific church in a specific time in a specific place. That's why we say context is important here. Yeah, they kind of had some stuff here, blah blah blah. They say reality of hell, reality of heaven. I don't really know. I've never been, and no one can tell us. So like, do I think there's a hell? Yeah, but do I think people will be there? No. I think that I'll be redeemed, that want to be redeemed. I've been in the C.S. Lewis camp about like the doors of hell have been broken open. So if you want to be there, you can stay, but you can come out because Jesus has broken open the doors of heaven. Hopefully, YouTube won't copyright claim for my own video here. Blah 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 blah. Okay, what did I? And then we went through this part. I don't know what I was saying. All right. I think I talked a little bit about literature and how like you kind of are stuck in this like they have very specific books they want you to read, and the literature is very dull. Like for some men, they got you reading the Scarlet Letter, which is a book about adulthood, but they don't want you to have sex ed. Like make it make sense here. The Scarlet Letter is about a woman who has a child out of wedlock, and she's forced to wear the Scarlet Letter A on her, and she's shamed. We read Julius Caesar and some other stuff, and that doesn't make a lot of sense either, but we did nonetheless. These science books aren't very good. They're very creationist. I'm not saying you can believe creationist if you want to, but like I don't know if science backs that up. And like science and religion can go hand in hand. You don't have to have all one and all the other, you know. And I find that very helpful to think about kind of way. But there is very specific, like New Earth. There's no room for theistic evolution. It's just this is what it is. That was created in 6 days, even though like I don't have proof to back that up, and I can't. I just think about these things. We went backwards a little bit. Um, what did I? I think I was yapping again. Oh, we're going in the history section. Yes, 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 yes. They're indoctrinating you. You know, Christopher Columbus, he wasn't a good person, okay? So forcing your children to think this guy was a good person is not good. These are like our great country, you know, at 5 years old. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. I went through looking at these books. Heritage of Freedom for Who? America, the land that I love, this kind of thing. They're kind of forcing you into loving America when you didn't really ask. Um, where's my mouse? Okay. They claim to have revised some stuff since I looked at this kind of thing. I was yapping. World history, U.S. history. I think I clicked on this one. Well, I clicked on some of these. Um, it's weird watching myself in a video because I don't know what I'm saying. I was just yapping. I'm a yapper for real. Um, we go through these books here. I think I went on a tangent about Abraham Lincoln again. Here, um, they went on a road about colonization, and colonization is not. They claim to be doing this in Jesus' name, but like and teaching people about Christianity, but no, they were doing some horrible things to people who did not deserve it. The war for independence, these kind of topics. It's weird they spent a whole chapter on Thomas Jefferson, who was not a Christian. He was in fact a deist, and he cut up the Bible, all kind of stuff. Um, and see the topics they choose to be big about. Even revival and stuff like that. Um, Challenges to Christianity. We're acting like Christianity's ever had like challenges. Um, States, transportation, the California Gadsden purchase, blah blah blah. Um, Come on, click next already. Be faster. I don't know what you're talking about, girl. Jeez, hurry up. I could just okay. This is what I want to talk about: slavery and succession. They spend one chapter on slavery and succession, which is really only like 10 pages. There's a whole lot to say about a country who brought enslaved people from their country to work for them. And I think I went on the rock about faith and stuff and how like enslaving people. Yes, there's scriptures about enslavement and that such and the other, but God has very specific instructions on like some people sold themselves into slavery to take care of their families and such like that. But God is like, after 7 years, this year of Jubilee, you have to forgive their loans, you have to forgive their debts, you have to let them go. God is very specific on these kind of things, how you treat people and things like that. And I think without context, like the Bible can be used to justify anything, good or bad. But if you don't use context clues, we kind of dug ourselves into a rut here. Maybe blah blah. I talked. Okay, I wanted to talk about. I think I will stop myself here for a moment. Okay, so we've gone. The last time I used these books, I was 2016. It was 2016 because I was in high school. The first year of high school was the 2016 election. Um, the 2016 election. So this last chapter is pretty new. They go through the administrations here. I don't know if they talk about Bill Clinton and his scandal or not, but we'll see. We won't see because I don't have these books. But the last couple sections is very interesting here. And they gave 5 pages of Donald Trump, and I want to know what this says. Because how can a faith like this justify a person who's vehemently racist, sexist, homophobic, has definitely sexually assaulted people and like have left it like this and being like, whatever. Yep. they say we're in moral decline here. I don't know about that. I think people have become free thinkers. Um, this book about the government. Yeah, I think I talked about a little bit about this. How about like these people were not Christians, they were deists, and they in fact did not really believe in Christianity that much, and they really were like adamant about the separation of church and state. Shall Christian obey human governors? I don't know. I think if they're doing bad. Okay, I was going on a tangent here about this. I lost my train of thought. My phone was ringing and I did not. Okay, they vehemently believe that America is a Christian nation, which is not true. We may have some Christian principles, but not a Christian nation. They vehemently believe that like God has told them that God is like we're the best nation because we're a Christian nation, which is not necessarily true. Um, the United States has never experienced a famine. What? A younger exposure. That's not true. Few Americans go hungry to bed each night. More than half the world's people are poor. Where's your sources? Cite your sources, please. Don't be making this stuff up, please, because I feel like this is just still a load of booooo here. Yes, they talk about why they think America has prospered because they believe in Christianity and that's what makes them good. That like America's great because of God, but that doesn't even. But some why has God blessed America? The founding fathers, no, they didn't. They weren't Christians. They were deists. They won't tell you this. Some garbage. Blah 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 blah. They talk about stuff. And I think I was done here. I think I went on a little bit of tangent about. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't been told today that you are loved, you are so loved. And if you're in a place like this, just deconstructing your faith or working through your experiences with stuff like this, let me know in the comments. And I hope to make more videos like this because it was really fun to make, but you didn't get to hear anything I had to say. So I hope you enjoyed this re-recording of this video that I just made yesterday. And hope you're having a wonderful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. Goodbye.